The office air felt stale that Friday evening, thick with the lingering scent of coffee and ambition. But my heart was buzzing with something electric, a current of pure adrenaline that made my fingertips tingle. The regional director had just stepped out of the boardroom, his footsteps echoing against the marble floors. He approached me with a smile that seemed to light up the entire hallway, and shook my hand firmly. His grip was warm, confident, and it sent a jolt of reality through my entire body. "You're the youngest woman in this company's history to be promoted to Vice President of Strategy. Congratulations, Emma. You earned this." His voice carried the weight of genuine respect, something I'd been craving for years but never dared to expect. I blinked hard, my vision blurring for just a moment. The words seemed to float in the air around me, surreal and impossible. For a second, I thought he was joking. The words bounced around in my head like they were in a foreign language. But when the applause erupted from the conference room behind us, loud and sustained, and my team started hugging me, their faces beaming with genuine pride and excitement, it hit me like a freight train barreling down the tracks at full speed. I did it. After 12 years of grinding, skipping holidays while my colleagues went skiing in Aspen, missing birthdays and family gatherings, pulling 70-hour weeks while earning my MBA in night school, while my brother Derek showed up to network and flirt with interns before disappearing to his poker games, I finally made it. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone, the device nearly slipping from my trembling fingers. The weight of this moment felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. All those nights spent studying financial models, portfolio theory, and market analysis while Derek was out drinking with his IT school friends before he dropped out halfway through his program. All those weekends I spent building investment strategies and analyzing market trends while he was gambling away his paycheck at underground poker games, racking up credit card debt that would later become my family's emergency. The celebration around me continued, but I felt like I was floating above it all, watching from a distance. My assistant handed me a glass of champagne, and I took a sip, feeling the bubbles dance on my tongue. This was real. This was happening. I had fought for this moment, bled for it, sacrificed everything for it. I texted my mum first, my fingers trembling as I typed each word carefully. "Mom, I got it. VP, they promoted me. The board loved my presentation on market diversification. 3 major investors want to meet with me next week." She replied instantly, and my heart sank like a stone thrown into dark water. Oh wow, shouldn't Derek get a chance first? He's been feeling down about his credit card debt. What about his feelings? You know how sensitive he gets. No congratulations. No, I'm proud of you. No acknowledgement of the years of night school, the sacrifices, the expertise I'd built. Just a reminder that in my family, I was born to be a placeholder for my brother's failures. The familiar sting of disappointment washed over me, but this time it felt different. This time I had something they couldn't take away, something I'd built with my own hands and mind. Still, I tried. I always tried, like a fool hoping for water from a stone, desperately clinging to the belief that maybe this time would be different. I even invited my parents to the dinner the company threw in my honor at the Ritz Carlton downtown. The table was set with crystal glasses that caught the light like diamonds, white roses in elegant arrangements, and place cards written in gold calligraphy. My colleagues were there, some of the city's top business leaders, even a few investors I'd been courting for months. The conversation flowed about market opportunities and strategic partnerships. I kept checking my phone, hoping they'd show up late, hoping they'd surprise me. They didn't come. My mom said Richard had a migraine, but I later found out through a mutual friend that they were at a golf club dinner. They were celebrating Derek's minor promotion to assistant manager at some startup my uncle ran. A company that would fold within 6 months, but they didn't know that yet. The irony was suffocating. Derek showed up drunk at my celebration, stumbled through the elegant dining room, nearly knocking over a server carrying a tray of champagne. He made his way to the bar, didn't even look at me. Just whispered loud enough for the whole room to hear, "She's a brown-noser." Always was. Probably slept her way to the top. The room went silent. My colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their conversations dying mid-sentence. My face burned with humiliation, heat spreading from my cheeks down to my neck. But I held my head high, my spine straight, my voice steady. This was my night, and I wasn't going to let him ruin it. Not anymore. When I got home that night to my penthouse apartment, the one I'd saved for 3 years to afford, my parents were sitting in the living room. They had used their spare key without asking, without permission, without any regard for my privacy or boundaries. My father Richard was holding a folder with my resume, and Derek was pacing like a caged animal, his eyes bloodshot and wild, his movements erratic and desperate. "What's going on?" I asked, setting down my purse and the congratulatory flowers from the investors, beautiful orchids that now seemed out of place in this tense atmosphere. "You're going to call HR tomorrow and reject the promotion," Richard said flatly, his voice cold as winter, devoid of any warmth or fatherly affection. I laughed, a sound that came out sharper than I intended, cutting through the tension like a blade. "What? Derek needs this more than you. You're not even married. You don't have kids. You don't need the pressure or the money. Derek has been struggling with his gambling debts, his credit cards are maxed out, and he needs something stable. You always get everything handed to you." The irony was suffocating. I had worked my ass off for this position. I had an MBA from Northwestern, a diversified investment portfolio worth over $500,000, and had just closed 3 major deals this quarter alone, bringing in millions in revenue. I had built this success from nothing, from night classes and weekend study sessions, and years of sacrificing my social life. "I earned this," I said, fire flaring in my voice, my hands clenching into fists. "I have the qualifications, the experience, the results. I've been preparing for this role for years." And then Richard slapped me, open palm right across the face, the sound echoing through the penthouse like a gunshot. The impact sent me stumbling backward, my cheek burning with pain and shock. My mouth tasted like blood, metallic and bitter, and I could feel my lips swelling. My own mother, Patricia, didn't even flinch. She just adjusted her glasses and said, "Don't provoke him, Emma. You know how worked up he gets when Derek's hurt. Think about what the neighbors will say if this gets out. We have a reputation to maintain." The neighbors. The reputation. Always about appearances, never about what was right or fair or just. When I picked myself off the floor, my hands shaking with rage and disbelief, Derek had the audacity to say, "It's just a job title, Emma. You'll get another one. Besides, I heard some investors are interested in my new app idea." The same investors who had pulled out of his last 3 ventures. The same app idea he'd been talking about for 2 years, without writing a single line of code. "No, Derek," I hissed, my voice low and dangerous, vibrating with years of suppressed anger. "You'll never get this one, because you didn't earn it. And I'm done handing over my life to you." I walked upstairs, my heels clicking on the hardwood, locked my bedroom door, and started writing my resignation letter. But not from the company, from the family. The next morning, I filed for emancipation at the courthouse downtown. Yes, at 31 years old, I wanted it legal and documented, a paper trail that would protect me from their manipulation. I also contacted my lawyer to start looking into something I'd buried for too long, my trust fund, the one my grandfather left for me that Richard always said had legal issues. The same fund that was supposed to give me financial independence, the one that could have funded my MBA without student loans, the one that represented my grandfather's love and faith in my potential. I spent the weekend diving through old documents, bank statements, legal papers that had been gathering dust in my safe. And I started digging deeper, following paper trails and bank transfers with the same analytical skills I used in my investment strategies. What I found made my blood run cold. The trust fund wasn't lost. It hadn't been tied up in legal complications. It had been siphoned, systematically drained, and used as collateral for Derek's multiple business loans over the past 5 years. Loans for his failed restaurant, his abandoned tech startup, his cryptocurrency investment scheme. Loans he defaulted on, and they were still in my name. They hadn't just stolen money from me. They had stolen my financial future, my security, my grandfather's love and legacy. But that wasn't even the final straw. That came the next week when I received an anonymous email from someone in finance. Someone who had clearly grown tired of watching the corruption unfold. It was a screenshot of a memo drafted by Richard and Derek, sent to several board members. They were planning to lobby the board, my board, to demote me due to emotional instability and inability to handle pressure. They wanted me removed so Derek could slide into my position like a snake into warm sunlight. The subject line read Operation Clear the Path. That night I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things or collapse in despair. I poured myself a glass of wine. My best vintage, looked in the mirror and whispered, "Let the game begin." I didn't go back to the office on Monday. Instead, I met with a woman named Victoria Chen, one of the top corporate attorneys in the city and a partner at Chen and Associates. Her office was pristine, all glass and steel overlooking the financial district, and she had a reputation for dismantling corporate corruption with surgical precision. Her walls were lined with awards and photographs of her with governors and CEOs. Testimony to her power and influence. I told her everything, the slap that still made my cheek ache, the stolen trust fund, the attempted smear campaign, the years of manipulation and gaslighting. Every detail, every email, every moment of abuse and neglect. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. She didn't blink. She didn't express shock or sympathy. She simply said, "Let's take their castle brick by brick." First, I froze the trust account with a court order that Victoria expedited through her connections. She uncovered the trail of misuse with forensic accountants, following every transaction and transfer with meticulous detail. Derek had taken 3 separate loans backed by my inheritance, each one larger than the last. Richard had signed as his guardian, claiming I was financially irresponsible and emotionally unstable. It was fraud, pure and simple, documented and provable. They thought because I never asked questions. Because I trusted them, I never knew. But I had my MBA in finance. I knew how to read the signs, how to follow the money trail. Next, I began quietly collecting evidence. Emails, memos, files, recorded conversations. I installed recording apps on my phone, documented every interaction, every threat, every manipulation. With Victoria's help, I filed a private whistleblower complaint within the company. I didn't accuse Richard and Derek of theft. Not yet. That would come later. First, I accused them of manipulating company assets, falsifying mental health claims against a senior employee, and conflict of interest due to family ties. It triggered an internal audit that would shake the company to its core. Then I did something that would have terrified the girl I used to be. I walked into the quarterly board meeting wearing the sharpest navy suit I owned, tailored to perfection, heels that clicked like a ticking clock against the polished floor. I carried a leather briefcase and a thumb drive with every dirty email and financial cover-up Derek and Richard had touched. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady, my voice clear. The boardroom fell silent as I connected my laptop to the projector. The directors were silent as I played audio of Derek mocking female staff, bragging he could get VP just by default when Emma eventually crashes, and an email from Richard literally saying, "Let's push her into a burnout spiral and get Derek in before the next fiscal." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Several board members were visibly disturbed, shaking their heads in disgust, whispering among themselves. The chairman's face was red with anger, not at me, but at the corruption that had been festering under his nose. When the lights came on, I simply said, "I'm not resigning, but they are." The board voted unanimously. Both Derek and Richard were barred from entering the premises until further notice. An ethics committee would determine next steps. But the outcome was already clear. My hands shook, but not from fear. This time, it was rage finally released, and it felt like pure electricity coursing through my veins. But I wasn't done. Not even close. With Victoria's help, I filed a civil lawsuit for breach of trust, identity fraud and emotional damages. The legal papers were served at their home at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday by a sheriff's deputy who handed them the thick envelope with clinical efficiency. The press picked it up within days. Headlines read, "VP battles own family in corporate sabotage case. Father-daughter feud uncovers $2 million trust fraud." The story was picked up by business journals, local news, even a few national outlets. Social media exploded with commentary, most of it supportive of my fight against nepotism and corruption. And oh, how the mighty crumbled. Richard's name was wiped off the donor wall of our alma mater. His membership at the country club was under review. Derek's startup investors pulled out faster than rats fleeing a sinking ship. Their bank accounts froze. The golf club revoked Richard's membership. Patricia had to quit her library job due to the shame and whispers from the other librarians, the sideways glances and hushed conversations that followed her everywhere. Patricia called, sobbing, asking how I could ruin the family name and what people at church would think, what the neighbors would say, how she couldn't show her face at the grocery store anymore. I told her the family name ruined itself. I'm just washing it off mine. Weeks passed. The legal proceedings moved forward with Victoria's relentless efficiency. Then one day, Derek showed up at my penthouse apartment. somehow getting past security by claiming to be making a delivery. He looked pale, thinner, defeated. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes hollow with dark circles underneath. The cocky swagger was gone, replaced by desperate pleading and trembling hands. "Emma," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I know I messed up, but can we talk? I need a job." "Anything, please. I'll do whatever you want. I'll work in the mailroom, I'll clean offices, anything." I didn't even open the screen door. I looked at him through the glass and felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no satisfaction. Just cold indifference, like looking at a stranger who had wandered into my building by mistake. "You slapped my hand off the edge when I was building my own ladder. Now you want to climb mine? No, you fall." The door clicked shut with finality, the sound echoing through the hallway like a judge's gavel. A month later, at the next shareholder meeting, I unveiled something unexpected. I had purchased 22% of company shares using the recovered trust fund, my trust fund, and a quiet deal I made with 2 early investors who believed in my vision and had watched my performance for years. That gave me leverage, influence, and a new title: President of Strategic Development and Equity Inclusion. I stood before the entire room, my voice clear and strong, projecting to the back row, and said, "This company once let nepotism nearly destroy its brightest talent. No more. We're rebuilding from the top, and we're doing it right." The applause was thunderous. Several board members stood, nodding their approval. I had allies now, people who respected my vision and my integrity. Outside that room, I finally felt the weight lift from my shoulders. But it wasn't over yet, because the people who once screamed that I was just dramatic and too emotional and not leadership material were about to see exactly what happens when the girl they tried to break learns how to build her own empire and invites none of them inside. The months that followed felt like reclaiming every version of myself they tried to bury. I didn't just take the title. I rebuilt what it meant. I launched a mentorship initiative for young women in corporate roles, funded entirely through a portion of my company dividends. The program included leadership training, financial literacy workshops, and networking events. Ironically, using the exact inheritance Richard once tried to funnel into Derek's failed tech venture. The board trusted me now, not out of pity or obligation, but because of performance. Cold, hard numbers that spoke louder than any family drama. I increased company profit margins by 14% in the first 2 quarters. HR turnover dropped to record lows. Client retention stabilized at 96%. Employee satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. In meetings, people didn't call me Derek's sister or Richard's daughter. They called me by my name, Emma Carter, President. The business press took notice. I was featured on magazine covers, invited to speak at conferences, asked to join boards of directors. My LinkedIn profile exploded with connection requests from CEOs and investors. I had become exactly what I'd always had the potential to be, but what my family had tried to prevent. And while I rebuilt the business, my family unraveled like a cheap sweater. Derek's fiancée left after seeing the lawsuit documents, taking half their shared belongings and blocking his number. Richard's old business partners dropped him like poison, refusing to return his calls or acknowledge him at industry events. Their assets were frozen pending resolution of the fraud case. My parents moved out of their 5-bedroom suburban home into a tiny rental apartment paid for by Patricia's part-time job at the local library. She texted me once, "You've made your point. Come fix this." I didn't respond. There was nothing to fix. They had made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. One cold November afternoon, I got a knock at my office door. My assistant poked her head in and said, "You've got 2 guests. They say it's urgent." It was my parents. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of their choices. Richard's eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling. Not from age, but from the withdrawal of ego and pride. His suit was wrinkled, his shoes scuffed. He looked at the floor, then mumbled, "We need work, Emma. Patricia's job doesn't cover the rent, and Derek's staying with us again. He's not well. You were always the smart one. Maybe you can talk to the board." The audacity was breathtaking. After everything they'd done, they wanted me to save them. And I stood in silence for several seconds, letting the weight of the moment settle between us. Then I stepped around my desk and said, clearly, not coldly, "You beat me to protect Derek's ego. You told the company I was unstable. You tried to steal my future, and now you want to work under it." Richard winced. Patricia started to sob, her shoulders shaking with each breath. "We raised you," she said bitterly. You owe us. I owe you nothing. Then I reached into the file drawer, pulled out 2 manila folders and handed them over. What's this? Richard snapped. I smiled. Job applications, entry level, no benefits, hourly wage. You can apply online or in person. Your call. Their jaws dropped. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Patricia muttered, You're cruel. No, I'm fair and kind because I could have blacklisted you from every corporate circle in the region. I didn't, but I'll never work with you. Not again. They stood there, stunned, defeated, humiliated. You said I wasn't leadership material, I added. Turns out I was the only one who ever was. And with that, I pressed the intercom. Jenna, can you walk our guests out? They left without another word, their footsteps echoing in the marble hallway like a funeral march. That night, I sat in my quiet penthouse apartment, alone but not lonely. The city lights twinkled below me like stars, each one representing a dream, a possibility, a future I had fought to create. I wasn't just the VP who survived betrayal. I was the woman who turned pain into power, who built a legacy out of wreckage. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. There were emails from investors, speaking requests, job offers from Fortune 500 companies. My phone buzzed with text messages from colleagues, friends, mentors celebrating my success. I had built something bigger than revenge. I had built a life. And as I watched the city skyline glow through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I knew one thing for certain: they tried to erase me to make room for him. But now every building they drive past carries my name. Every job they apply for leads to my door. And every day they wake up is a reminder. They bet against me and lost everything. But I had won something more valuable than revenge. I had won my freedom, my dignity, and my future. And that was worth more than all the trust funds and family approval in the world.